So if you are comfortable with using Twitter, please tweet as often as possible during the day using the hashtags Caux and on the theme of restoring Earth's degraded land is one direct response to the call to action which was issued from this hall by last year's Caux Forum. Claire Short and others have worked on this short text which emphasizes the unique opportunity of this moment in history to tip mankind towards lasting solutions to urgent problems. This call to action stresses the important part that every single person has to play in working for solutions, and that each of us can start in our own lives and with our own lifestyles to take what action each of us can take. So again, in welcoming you, I would now like to introduce to you Martin Frick, who's going to be the host for our day. Martin has 14 years' experience in the diplomatic field, particularly focusing on human rights and humanitarian affairs. Since November last year, he has been program leader for climate diplomacy.
You see in the topic of the day, it's called reversing man-made deserts. So there's an insight here that deserts are actually man-made. There is an inspiration here that you can undo the damage that people did to the world's degraded land. And there's a challenge because there's something to do. And I would very much like to welcome a challenger, which is Claire Short. She came here 3 years ago and challenged this place and said what we need is a call to action. And now she keeps challenging people as the chairperson of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative and as a policy advisor to an initiative called Cities Without Slums. So without much ado, I would very much like to welcome Claire Short and give her the floor to present the first part of this program to you. Thank you very much. Jean leads an environmental activist 2 years ago, the experience of restoring the Chinese Caux Plateau. So with my apologies, I would like to give the floor to Jean Liu first before we go to Claire Short. Jean, yeah.
There is some audio somewhere. That here, behind the Himalayas, and there's a river that was once known as the Mother River. And it was known as the Mother River because all the different tribes grew up in this area. If we could lower the lights, it would be very helpful. If the story were to stop there, it would be a very sad story. But over the last 30 years, the Chinese have reinvented their society, and they've drawn on some of the characteristics that they have gotten from enduring terrible
as they transitioned from subsistence agriculture. There was infiltration and retention of rainfall, terracing, planting, the differentiation and designation of ecological land, and this was taking place over 35,000 square kilometers. So the active project area was the size of Belgium.
Reducing the area, so the ecological land maybe 40, 50, 60%. But they could increase yields this way because they had soil moisture and fertility. And all of this is sequestering carbon, and it's re-regulating the hydrological cycle, the weather, and the climate. And in these areas, I've had illiterate farmers.
Now this makes me very philosophical. And I think about the planet, and I think about these evolutionary processes.
was a conflict between pastoralists and cultivators. It's not just in the poorest countries, though, of course, they have less resilience, and so the effects hurt people more quickly, the whole of southern Europe. The OECD countries are supposed to be the sort of the high point of human civilization and development, and there's a sadness, a lack of meaning, shopping. Yeah. We have more knowledge, technology, capital, the capacity to move information, investment around the world than humanity has ever had. But people feel powerless, and I think people feel depressed. They can see that it's wrong. They can see it's not making people happy.
I'm really grateful to all those people who have made this possible. I can see them and thank you for the support. But from my viewpoint, security looks to me very different. Because from my vantage point, a new form of insecurity is emerging. Climate change is certainly a factor, but there is a far greater issue. Geopolitical model that underpins climate change, which could be much worse and could have much worse implications than the current oil peak we are all concerned about. 2004 Nobel Peace Prize winner Mangali Matai once said, in few decades, the relationship. In 1993, Earth Action and the US Department of Agriculture produced a graphic with the Earth as an apple. They conducted that study and they concluded that only 3.5 or 3.25% of that apple was equivalent to the amount of fertile land available globally for human survival. And they were referring only to its peel, which represents what we call the byland. And when you cut the land section in half, one of these halves is covered with mountain, natural desert, and ice. And cut the remaining part into four. 3 of these are rocky, wet, hot, or infertile, or covered by road or cities. Only that portion, 1 out of 30. The causes are different from one region to the other. You can see here that mainly in Africa, the application is about overgrazing, followed by agriculture, and then deforestation. But in Asia, it's mainly about deforestation, followed equally by desert making space. That is why the theme of today is so relevant. How are we going to join force to reclaim what we have over the generation degraded? That is what today's meeting is about. Land degradation could be defined as the reduction of the capacity of the land and the soil to provide. Because if I don't count the desert, half of the continent is made of arid, semi-arid, and dry, subhumid areas. And vulnerability also, we shall see, is about poverty. As you can see in this graphic, that it's a kind of vicious circle. It starts with soil degradation. We have seen it in what the short video presented by John Liu, and followed by decline in agronomic and biomass productivity, and then food insecurity, and decline in environmental quality, of course, with greenhouse gases emission. And here we are in a vicious cycle. And this has brought us into what I call a new type of human security.
Thank you very much for the speakers this morning. I would say there is one question. We always speak of agricultural land, but how much land is wasted in cities, you know, including in European cities, in American cities. And then my second question is to say, you had such a rich expose that we missed a few steps, certainly. Is it available in print or on a website? Because I would very much like to share with some friends. But thank you very much.
You can have access to it through Caux website, and you can also have access to it through the UNCCD website as well. Yes, I get your point that land is also wasted in the cities. You know, the way we are urbanizing is part of the problem. Urbanization is part of the problem.
What would be the consequences if we didn't succeed? So now that's 14 years ago. My question is, why do you think, since 14 years we know all this, and why haven't we succeeded to change in the last 40 years? Because it would have been easier 40 years ago than today.
We have moved in a top-down approach mainly. Top-down approach. I have said that we need to do it with, by, and for the people. If we just plan for some impressive agroforestry programs, and it's not by and with and for the people, it will not work. And there have been examples.
Alors, on parle beaucoup de la désertification, de la récupération des terres, mais il n'y a pas suffisamment d'efforts qui sont constatés de la communauté internationale. Est-ce que vous ne pensez pas que cela est lié justement à la gouvernance ou à la mauvaise gouvernance internationale du moment où on a vu qu'il y a encore quelques jours, il a suffi juste de prendre des résolutions pour enclencher une offensive qui a coûté à ce jour à peu près 100 millions de dollars. En 2007-2008, lorsqu'il y a eu justement la grande crise financière, facilement tous les pays, en tout cas développés, ont mobilisé des centaines et des centaines de millions de dollars, pour peut-être même des milliards, pour relancer leurs finances. Alors, est-ce que vous ne pensez pas que cela devrait passer par la démocratisation du Conseil de sécurité, non pas dans le sens de la belligérance, mais dans le sens du développement, qui consisterait à prendre une résolution dans le sens du développement et puis à la mettre en application? Merci.
Et les exemples que nous avons, qui sont des exemples réussis, sont des exemples d'aujourd'hui, qui démontrent qu'à force de voir chez les autres ce qu'ils n'ont pas fait, nous échouons à faire ce que nous pouvons faire. J'ai eu l'opportunité en 2005 d'avoir été associé à l'évaluation des documents dits de stratégie de réduction de la pauvreté de première génération en Afrique, sous l'assistance du PAM, Programme alimentaire mondial. Parce que c'est un pays qui a 75%
secteur privé. D'après les objectifs du millénaire, le 8e objectif du millénaire, c'est de bâtir des partenariats publics-privés pour le développement. Et vous avez parlé à la fin de notre exposé justement du rôle du secteur du business, en mentionnant en particulier une entreprise dans le domaine du ciment. Très concrètement, qu'est-ce qui peut motiver le secteur privé de s'engager dans ce genre d'action alors que le retour sur investissement sera dans 5 ans ou dans 10 ans?
Le résultat, triple résultat sur 3-5 ans. Première chose que je voudrais dire ici. Il y a très peu de business qui vous triple le retour sur investissement en 3-5 ans. Donc, si les hommes d'affaires conçoivent cela, ils peuvent certainement revoir leur business process et leur business model. J'ai fait référence à des exemples que nous connaissons. J'ai vu au Guatemala une entreprise de cimenterie investir dans des programmes d'afforestation pour faire beaucoup de plantation d'arbres. Pourquoi ils l'ont fait?
You have described the destructive chain of cause and effect which leads to desertification. For example, more population, more cattle, more pressure on agriculture, more pressure on grazing and so on. Now, the question is, how do you break this chain of cause and effect? If you don't break it, and where do you break it? And because people, all the land, however badly it's being used, is still being used to sustain people. So you've got to find an alternative way of sustaining them while you break the chain. And if you could tell us a few examples, you mentioned agroforestry, for example. But if you could tell us from your experience of a few ways in which one can meet this problem of breaking the chain of extraction, I'd be very grateful.
Well, thank you. Abbott says that it is about more people and more animal. It is possible to have more people, more animal, and not degrade. It's about, overgrazing is about the timing of grazing. If you rotate the grazing, not to have the animal to graze at the same place all the time, if you rotate grazing, you will not overgraze actually. You will have rather the other effect, where grazing in one place and moving the animal will bring the animals even to contribute to fertilizing the soil. So we know that it is possible. The issue here is, why are we not doing what works?
I've got experience of working with them for 30 years in Kenya, where 90% of the sand dams in the world were built. But they have the opportunity of communities building them themselves and providing water close to their homes, saving between 2 and 10 hours a day to enable them to invest their time in tree planting, terracing land. And I would like to know if the awareness of sand dam technology is there, because I think it's a vital part of this initiative to reverse the degradation of land.
There are many technologies, there are many such stories and many lessons that we have been learning over the decades. The point here is that land degradation is site-specific. It is context-specific. It's about the people and their interaction with the land, but they are not stupid. What they do, that's what I used to tell the expert I sent on the field. I said, when you get there, please first of all, and then listen and open your eyes to first understand why the people there are doing what they are doing, the way they are doing it. Then your science may come to help them to improve. So because it is science-specific, I don't intend to say that we need to cast and paste.
Say we won't look after the slums because then more people will move. People say it so often, and it's a real mistake. We must look after the people where they are. And in fact, the towns can create a market for improved agricultural productivity, which will make life better for the rural dwellers too.
Quality for New York. There has been one thing that they discovered, that it was much more cost efficient and effective to incentivize activities upstream to New York Basin to have better quality of water. And they have done it. So this is an example of many type of things that we could do when we plan for the cities. And we are investing for the city, including infrastructure.
I would like to get your comment on this. What do you think of this scheme? And the second question, I'm very interested on international action, on how we as a group, as an international community, can reverse the degraded land as a coalition of across the world, and what mechanisms can we make?
That we face, and is about how we put a price tag on the multiple impact in sequestering carbon to the soil.
What can, say, the UNCCD do, what role will it play in promoting those techniques and getting people up to speed on how to use them and implement them?
Or what new ideas are you bringing now to support countries to concentrate on land degradation, for the country to focus on rehabilitating the land, to plant trees more, rather than focusing on other areas? And this is true, this is happening, but nothing has been done. Thank you.
What is the relationship going to be between fertilizer corporate companies, pesticide companies, which are making a lot of money, and on the other hand, and if biomass is supposed to be the alternative, that also creates pollution, and that will reduce the nutrients to the soil.
En ce qui concerne pour notre ami du Congo par rapport à l'industrie forestière, comme vous l'avez vous-même dit, ce sont les pays, en particulier du bassin du Congo, deuxième bassin forestier du monde, qui autorisent l'exploitation forestière. En soi, l'exploitation forestière n'est pas un mal. Quand elle est bien planifiée et gérée, elle peut contribuer précisément à faire de la forêt un atout de développement, tout en veillant à ce que cela soit durable, que cela aussi bénéficie aux populations. Donc, dans l'absolu, ce n'est pas un mal. Il y a simplement que les pays qui ont ce potentiel, ce capital-là, ont la responsabilité de le gérer de façon durable et de permettre de donner les autorisations en fonction de cela. Alors, par rapport à la lutte contre la pollution des sols, si vous avez vu sur le graphique que j'ai montré, dans la partie agriculture, la pollution à travers les engrais et les pesticides fait partie de ça.
My apologies to those who raised the question.
It's not that we don't want it.
Well, it's a privilege to have this opportunity to be once again an emissary for Imam Muhammad Shafa and Pastor James Uye from Kaduna, Nigeria.
Je ne suis pas professeur d'ailleurs. Ici, je vous présente deux conflits. D'abord, il y a dans beaucoup de régions une contraction des ressources naturelles et pas une expansion. Et notamment, je me rappelle que le secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Ban Ki-moon, et bien sûr, vous allez voir cet après-midi les détails de son parcours. Et l'homme qui arrêta le désert. C'est le titre de ce documentaire de l'après-midi. Et vous voyez ici aussi les ailes en action, toute la pluviométrie et le ruissellement qui donne aussi à ces femmes. Donc toutes les feuilles pour la sauce, ça donne un revenu monétaire. Et en 2008, c'était intéressant, il avait eu une récolte qui était tellement bonne qu'il a invité les femmes qui sont à vivre en libre. Il faut bâtir aussi des institutions locales qui protégeront et amélioreront le parc agroforestier. Il y a une composante qui veut lier Charmant aussi de l'agroforesterie. Il est un spécialiste en la matière, donc il ne valait même pas. Il est un spécialiste en télédétection aussi, donc on n'avait pas besoin d'expliquer la transformation politique.
Claude Bourdin, je suis un des coordinateurs de ce projet, mais ce que vous venez de montrer est un vrai exemple de la vraie ressource qui quelquefois est trop oubliée des agriculteurs. Ma question...
Because they were in a crisis, they were with their back against the wall. They had no choice. Either they had to disappear, to migrate out of the area where they were born.
I have a suggestion on how to strengthen the power of farmers on their lands decision, or the decision of their own lands. How to strengthen the power of
If farmers do not own their land, but do not have a secure title, it's becoming much more difficult.
Although, so is the ownership, I mean, is the common ownership, can these herders take their animals anywhere? And how do you control whether they overgraze?
From the north to the south, and from the south to the north. So we have to go through the areas with the agroforestry systems. So they can along branches, which they need for the livestock, because they need to fodder. In fact, the women in the area quite like it because they tend to leave the tree species, the parts of the trees on the field. They only use the leaves. So livestock owners do some useful work for the women, which just come to collect what is being left.
The question now is, we have 16 radio stations in Kenya, and we would like to know how we can link with your group so that we can enhance the work in Kenya and in the region where we also have media.
Député parlementaire au Mali, j'étais très intéressé par l'exposé que j'ai vu tout à l'heure. La promesse m'avait été faite hier. Je suis comblé. J'ai appris beaucoup de choses sur mon pays, parce que j'avoue que sur la régénération des sols, je continue à croire qu'il n'y avait pas beaucoup d'espoir. Je m'apportais la preuve contraire. Je suis très heureux. Et il y a des moments de l'année où pratiquement on traverse le fleuve à quai. Donc je me dis qu'il est important d'associer cette importante question, parce que c'est aussi la question de l'avitaillement en eau, à la question de la protection de la terre, qui fait partie à mon avis de la protection de l'environnement. L'introduction du business dans l'agriculture, l'agrobusiness. L'agrobusiness a pour conséquence de chasser la petite production pastorelle. Alors il y a une contradiction là, la nécessité d'aller à ce développement de l'agriculture et en même temps à la protection de la petite production pastorelle. Alors, est-ce que vous avez réfléchi à la question? Quelle solution de conciliation y a-t-il? Merci.
Moi, j'ai apprécié l'exposé que je viens de faire. Je remercie donc le conférencier et je vous félicite pour la qualité de cet exposé. Alors même que la préoccupation première de nos chefs d'État, de nos différents régimes, devrait être justement de s'occuper de l'alimentation, du problème de la survie. Ce n'est pas le cas malheureusement. Et parfois, on attend certains de nos responsables parler en disant oui, on va utiliser les ressources financières rapportées par nos produits.
Thank you for all the good questions. Let me start with the question about Kenya, linking the radios in Kenya with let's say the activities that are now going on in West Africa. I think that will be possible. Just 2 weeks ago, I made a presentation in The Hague, and somebody, the natural resource management advisor of the Prime Minister of Kenya, turned out to be among those who were there. And he said, we want a re-greening initiative also in Kenya. And I said, I'm coming to Kenya. Let's explore what to do. Donc, j'ai l'intention de venir, I have the intention to come in September to Kenya to explore the possibilities with Kenyans to develop a re-greening initiative.
It's a long time.
I didn't get a chance to ask you these questions, but I wanted to ask them.
Ah bon, alors là on va dire quelque chose.
Je vous ai montré aussi cet exemple du ministre de l'Agriculture du Burkina, j'ai montré son image, qui est vraiment derrière cette initiative. Il a fait une session.
Parce que je suis sorti là, juste pour terminer, il a annoncé quelque chose.
Non, il répondait à des questions.
Ah d'accord.
Des questions. Il répondait vraiment le plus simplement possible.
Des projets de financement sur des technologies pour supporter aussi
trust each other, and they will see the difference on the field, and they will certainly they are likely to replicate it, you know, instead of just listening to an outsider who may come with
dans le budget, le support du budget national. Hein? C'est un fait. Quand il fait ce support dans le budget national, Et l'application, c'est utilisé quoi? C'est là peut-être que les pays aussi doivent ou bien c'est obligé à part.
Non, en fait, nous cherchons notre financement à part. Nous cherchons notre financement à part, mais on cherche, on utilise ce fonds pour faire des moyens auprès des décideurs. Alors, nous sommes actuellement dans chacun des pays, il faut un leader. Donc, vous tenez moi de tout ça.
When did you get here?
Down.
I believe that these people who want to cut out what is happening they may not. Yeah,
Don't need to import another.
Exactly.
Kenya's thankfully made that legal.
Mais cela n'a pas toujours été le cas. Il y a 25 ans, quand il a commencé sa lutte pour sauver les sols, personne n'imaginait à quel point il allait réussir. Grâce à son œuvre, des étendues importantes de terres dégradées ont été transformées en champs fertiles, pleins de vie. Des cultures vivrières ont été plantées. Les forêts ont repoussé.
Très bien votre...
Ah oui, bien sûr. Merci.
C'est vrai que c'est une très belle leçon.
N'est-ce pas?
Ouais, merci.
Tu es une jambe. Ouais. Ok, d'accord. Et attends,
zamani ya hii kutunga pour babar bangare awokum ke bangare awokum da sonu ma da hakki to pour babar pour le trisi barka bon vatra sabab pour zaman fa ki ni ko pour babar
question. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier M. Caux, car premièrement c'est grâce à lui qu'il est aussi porté jusqu'à un certain haut niveau. Après le remerciement à Caux, je vais remercier l'organisateur des événements.
Oui, parce que what is the range? I was deeply impressed by what I've seen.
It's still characterized by drought years because nobody pays you rainfall. And immediately after they began realizing the difference in water harvesting techniques, the water levels in the wells started coming up. So there was no irrigation.
À cause de ces interdits qui bloquent le développement, qu'est-ce qui vous a donné la force d'aller au-delà des interdits?
My question is, as a forum here, the Forum of Human Security, as a participant, I would love to hear more from Mr. Ibuka about what do you need from the international community and what would you like to see happen to expand your work? And I'm very interested in that.
Parce que Tanzanie, il y a pour la pays. Il y a duniya a aka filo duniya sa ba kai